presentation indicated that Tether was lacking some transparency measures. I just want to know what leads you to believe that, and do you think that DeFi as a whole could recover from major enforcement actions against the two predominant stablecoins, USDC or Tether, and could there be a shift in the future to purely decentralized stablecoins such as DAI?
I think the issue with Tether is the question around its reserves and the transparency of the auditing of those reserves. When you have a bank that holds a large amount of your reserves just vanish off the face of the earth, that's a bit of an issue to me. I think DeFi is here to stay, but I think it remains to be seen in what form. And I agree with you that if Circle was to be hit with the Wells notice, that would have a significant impact, driving people into DAI and other decentralized protocols.
Do you think those are robust enough to take on sort of the liquidity and the required volumes of DeFi? Could these decentralized protocols?
I think so.
Yeah, over time they become robust enough.
Yeah, DAI is pretty robust as it is.
Well, it's backed by USDC also partially.
Yeah.
Explain why they need a stable coin or why they use it.
Basically because it's fungible and it's digital. Whereas USD is not. So for a digital protocol, you need a digital item.
Why do they want it tied to the US dollar?
I think that's to give confidence in the value of the protocol. I whizzed through the presentation pretty quickly. Was there anything in particular that people had questions on? More about what EthTrust is doing and
someone wanted to just look up the smart contracts. Where would you go to actually look at the content of the smart contracts that run?
Yeah.
Easily found if you just look at the smart contracts for
yeah.
There's that.
I just did a search. It's like DAI smart contracts, and the first thing that pops up is the GitHub repository with all their. So.
Sure.
In the brief for
Yeah. You can't. This is the problem. You've got no idea where your income pool is coming from. So you can't AML and KYC it because there isn't a person behind it. There are some solutions like Aave who are doing totally AML and KYC pools. So at least you know the pool of people who you would have to AML and KYC. The problem for this is for anyone who's subject to OFAC. Because if you can't show that you've AML and KYC'd where you're getting your income from, then you're in trouble with OFAC.
So do you think it's going to be something where the industry as a whole is towards that measure, or is it going to come about more as legislative?
I think so.
Can I ask a mechanical question about what you all do? So you've got all this cash sitting in independent ATMs and kind of not doing anything, and you guys can put it to work. What's the mechanical process that either a bank or an ATM operator goes through to sort of hook their platform up to yours? Because a lot of ATMs have like ancient technology. How do they hook it up and how does it work?
We have a Raspberry Pi device that we insert into the ATMs that verifies the balance.
I'm sorry, say again.
We have a Raspberry Pi device that is attached to the ATM.
Awesome.
That's like for experiments. I don't trust putting anything in that. I mean, how much, like, what kind of assets are we talking about that like this is going to be going in this EthTrust?
USD.
Like a lot?
Yeah.
You're going to put that, you're going to be using a Raspberry Pi?
Yeah.
I don't trust that.
Why not?
Do you know what a Raspberry Pi is?
Yeah.
That's like what students use. I mean, like, so, like, if you're setting this up like for like a real, like, EthTrust with $20 million, you should be looking at like a much more stable and secure infrastructure, right?
Well, look, I mean, Bitcoin is the most stable, secure infrastructure you have, and more than half of people writing nodes are using Raspberry Pi, right? So it just depends what they're using the Raspberry Pi for. If it's just to maintain the ledger, we don't have an issue.
Wait, nodes for Bitcoin? They're running Raspberry Pi?
100%. Yeah.
Yeah, but the difference is.
Okay, but what kind of, how are they getting the hash rate?
Those are miners. So that's why I said you have to understand what functionality she's talking about maintaining a ledger on Raspberry Pi. There's no issue with that.
How big of a ledger are you talking about? Like, is this going to keep getting bigger and bigger?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
And then won't be like, okay, so what are you going to just keep putting like a bigger and bigger hard drive on this Raspberry Pi?
Well, it's not just one.
That's
It's
just going to keep getting bigger and bigger.
I'm running my node. So I can tell you my Bitcoin node is half a terabyte. It has every single transaction from the beginning of time to now.
Okay.
Okay. So half a
What
terabyte.
about when we get into petabytes?
That's well, look. You're talking
That's
about
right?
10 years of data I can get for $50 today, right? So in 10 years from now, what's that going to cost $50 for a better? We haven't heard though the technical, backbone behind what's on this at all. So we're just guessing. We have Raspberry Pis and ATMs. What does that tell us? How much about how they work? I don't know. You're probably not here to do the technical side of the brief, but
I think like it's,
it's
I don't know. I guess there's a bit of a stigma around like using Raspberry Pis for this kind of stuff.
Tyson, do you want to comment?
No, I mean, I think.
Well, so I've got kind of a legal follow-on question. So let's assume that something goes wrong, whether it's when we get to a break, I'm going to have some of these guys explain what Raspberry Pis are to me. Let's say something goes wrong, and you're putting you're investing the deposits that people put in ATMs in various DeFi liquidity markets. Let's say something goes wrong with one of the liquidity markets where you have invested the money. What happens? How does the person who puts their money in the ATM make a claim to get their money back? Is it a claim against you? Is it a claim against the liquidity protocol? Is it a claim against their bank because the bank was, the bank had a contract with you and exposed them to risk? How does that all, having thought through from a legal point of view, how that would work and how you manage that risk?
Yes, the risk sits with the ATM.
I'm sorry, speak up a little bit.
The risk sits with the ATM.
Sits with the ATM. Okay. Okay, and is there any, are there any insurance products that help the financial institution out with managing the risk from their standpoint? Because if you can offer people 4% or something through an ATM, that sounds great. If it breaks, obviously, it's not so great. Does Lloyd's write a product for that, or any other insurance consortium?
I assume they do.
That's up to the banks to figure out. Got it.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So I was playing around with Curved, which is a different DeFi one, but they're paying out in the initial token that I put into the liquidity pool. And then they're also paying out a percentage on Matic and on their own Curved token. Can you explain how some of that works with all the different interest rates that they're paying out?
I'm not sure what you're asking.
So I don't understand how they can pay me Curved and pay me Matic on my Ethereum that I deposited with them. So it's a liquidity pool that's paying me a certain amount of interest.
As in how, as in where they're getting the cash from?
Well, am I staking Curved or somehow creating that by putting it into, I don't know what the liquidity pool is actually doing and how it's coming up with Matic and coming up with Curved tokens to pay out. Because you can't deposit those into that liquidity pool and then pay them out.
Curved is an interesting product, for sure. If you're asking where the tokens are coming from.
Yeah, because I know that they're both allow me to vote in, so I think they're proof of stake tokens, but they're not supposed to be coins or anything like that. They're really supposed to just be something that gives me rights to vote within, I think, DAO. But of course, everything has been monetized and speculated. There's a dollar value on those tokens now. And I was just wondering if I'm putting my money into something and they're making more coins through it, or I just don't understand the whole concept behind how they're paying out 3 different forms of assets essentially on one asset.
That's a function of how that protocol operates, really. It's questionable, for sure. I think it's important to remember the size of crypto and the size of DeFi within crypto. It's still very small despite the noise that it creates. And that really should be guiding the SEC's time and energy. when people wonder why we haven't seen more enforcement, this is why.
Can't read the bubble next to crypto.
Why looking at global market cap?
Was that the goal?
Yeah. Yeah.
I have a question, and this would be for anybody in the room who wants to take a crack at this, or you want to. In terms of looking at DeFi and all this activity that's happening, how do we see this big block of capital, that's institutional capital, moving into DeFi? Like, is it through fund structures? Is it through other new uses of technology? But how are institutional investors going to start investing in DeFi? What tools are there? What protocols? Like, what does this room think? What do you think? Like, where is all this going?
Generally, it comes from an offshore trust.
So I own XYZ fund. I'm in New York, but I have an offshore trust, and that offshore trust is then staking with whatever DeFi protocol.
And that's just one option. I see this decentralizing. It's going to go out in many different directions. There's like her is going to have this EthTrust thing, and then she's going to get some funds to go over there, and then someone else is going to have like a better like NFT staking option. People are going to be like, oh, I want to put my money over there. It's much easier for people to stake to it and get some value back, and like higher yields and stuff. So I mean, it's just going to be like fractured out. There's not just going to be one place it's going to go. Offshore trust, right?
Are there any solutions, tools, products that are helping make that easier? Generally, capital goes to where it's treated and protected the best. So are there tools or things that are helping move into DeFi?
I think we're not going to see institutional finance come into DeFi until you can AML and KYC the income from the pool. So I think that's a key solution.
What would that look like? Is that the SEC issuing something? What does that moment in time look like? Where we're like, okay, now institutional capital is going to play.
When sort of Aave or others produce a pool that's fully AML and KYC'd. So all the participants in the pool have been AML and KYC'd.